The hall was wide, dusty, and filled with the smell of rust and old metal. Long rows of broken machines, forgotten engines, and cracked ship parts stood under dim lights. Men in heavy coats and women with sharp eyes filled the seats, waiting for the next item to be dragged on stage. Most of them were here for profit, not for history. They wanted cheap scrap they could melt down and sell. At the far back, he sat quietly. His name was Marcus. He was not rich and he was not a dealer. He had come only to watch, or at least that was what he told himself. But his eyes kept drifting toward the covered shape near the corner of the hall. It was large, hidden under heavy tarps and chains as if someone feared it might escape. Something about it called to him. He could not explain why. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the speakers, sharp and loud. Next item. A very strange find from the desert dig, classified as scrap unfit for travel, worth only the metal it is built from. The workers pulled the tarp away. Dust rose into the air, making the lights shimmer. A gasp spread through the hall. Before them sat a massive starship, ancient, battered, but still whole. Its surface was marked with strange lines, glowing faintly as if some energy still lived inside. The wings were folded, the engines cracked, but the shape was majestic. It was not like the human ships Marcus had seen in books. This was older, alien. Laughter broke the silence. One of the buyers in the front row waved his hand. Scrap! It looks like a child's toy crushed in the sand. Others agreed, shaking their heads. The auctioneer smiled politely, eager to push the sale. It is large, yes, but it is only good for parts. Who will start the bidding? Marcus's hands clenched against his knees. His heart beat harder. He could feel something pressing against his chest, as if the ship itself was alive and watching him. No one else seemed to notice. They only saw rust and broken metal. But Marcus saw something more. One man stood up. He wore a black coat, his face hidden under the hood. His voice was low but strong. I will take it, at base price, and I will see it destroyed. The crowd turned toward him. Some laughed again. Why pay money only to scrap it faster? But Marcus felt a cold shiver crawl down his back. The way the man spoke was not casual. It was filled with purpose, like he feared the ship. The auctioneer lifted his hammer. Base price offer. Do I hear another? Silence filled the room. Everyone waited, uninterested. Everyone except Marcus. He rose slowly, surprising even himself. His voice cracked at first, then grew firm. I bid. The hall went still. People turned their heads. A young man in simple clothes was challenging the hooded buyer. Some smiled, thinking it was a joke. The auctioneer's eyebrow rose. Very well. We have 2 bids. The hooded man turned, his eyes barely visible. For a moment, Marcus felt the weight of that gaze. It was cold, dangerous, and filled with warning. Yet he did not sit down. The auctioneer raised his hand again. Shall we continue? Do I hear higher? Marcus swallowed, his throat dry. He did not know why he was doing this. He did not have much money, but his heart told him to keep going. Something about that ship mattered. Something about it must not be lost. The hooded man raised his hand again. Higher, Marcus spoke again. Higher. The room began to whisper. People leaned forward, sensing a strange fight. This was no normal sale anymore. This was a battle. The numbers climbed. The hooded man never looked away from Marcus, and Marcus never backed down. With every word, with every raise of the bid, Marcus felt the ship's pull grow stronger. It was like the ship itself was pushing him, whispering in a language he could almost understand. The auctioneer's hammer trembled in his hand. Final call. Any more bids? The hooded man paused. His jaw tightened, and for a moment it looked like he might strike Marcus down with his stare alone. Then slowly he lowered his hand. The hammer fell. Sold. To the young man. The hall broke into murmurs and laughter. Some shook their heads, saying Marcus was a fool. Others smirked, whispering that he had wasted everything on junk. But Marcus did not hear them. His eyes stayed on the ship. It looked broken, dead, and worthless. But in his chest, Marcus felt a heartbeat that was not his own. The ship was not dead. It was waiting. And deep inside, Marcus knew one thing for certain. He had just started something he could never walk away from. The hall buzzed with whispers after Marcus won the bid. People were still laughing, pointing at him as if he had just thrown his money into fire. But he did not hear them clearly. His eyes stayed fixed on the massive warship resting under the dusty lights. He felt as though the ship itself was watching him, silent but alive. The auctioneer cleared his throat and moved on to the next item. but the hull had already shifted. Something had changed. The hooded man in black did not leave his seat. He sat still, his face hidden, his hands resting on his knees. His presence was heavy, almost unnatural. Marcus felt the weight of those unseen eyes on him, colder than stone. A man in the row behind Marcus leaned forward. "Boy, you're mad. That ship is cursed. Everyone knows. Why do you think they dragged it here to sell for parts?" His voice was low, almost a warning. Marcus did not reply. The workers moved closer to the warship, preparing to mark it for transfer. Heavy chains clanked against the metal floor, but as they touched the hull, sparks jumped out. A hum rose through the air, soft at first, then sharp enough to silence the hull. The workers pulled back quickly, startled. "Just old wiring," one shouted nervously. But Marcus knew it was not just that. The hum seemed to run through his body, almost like a heartbeat answering his own. The hooded man finally stood. He walked slowly, every step echoing on the floor. People shifted away as he passed, whispering his name, though Marcus could not catch it. The man stopped near the stage, close to the ship. His voice came like steel. "This sale was a mistake." The auctioneer blinked. "Sir, the hammer has already fallen. The item is sold." The man lifted his head, and for the first time Marcus saw his eyes, bright and sharp, like blades of light buried in shadow. "Do you understand what you brought into this hall? That ship is not scrap. It is a weapon. It was never meant to rest in human hands." The room grew silent. A nervous laugh came from one corner, but it died quickly. Marcus's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but fear held him back. A weapon, what did the man mean? The hooded figure turned, his gaze locking on Marcus. "You return it. Walk away now while you can. You do not know what you are touching." The word struck him harder than he expected. For a moment, Marcus almost believed him. The ship loomed behind, dark and broken, yet alive with secrets. It was easy to believe it carried danger, easy to believe it carried death. But something inside Marcus pushed back. He remembered the spark he felt the moment he saw the ship. The pull in his chest. The way the engine seemed to hum when he stood near it. He could not walk away. "I want it," Marcus said quietly, his voice shaking but firm. "And I won't let it be destroyed." The hooded man's lips curled into the faintest smile, cold, thin, and cruel. "Then you have chosen your own end." Before Marcus could answer, the workers shouted again. One of the chains had snapped on its own, falling loose to the ground. The ship's wings shifted slightly, as if stretching after long sleep. Dust rained from the ceiling. Gasps echoed around the hall. The auctioneer backed away, his face pale. "Move it out. Quickly!" The hooded man's cloak swirled as he turned sharply. He strode out of the hall, leaving only the echo of his boots behind. The crowd began to scatter, frightened by the strange movement of the ship. But Marcus stayed rooted in place, his body stiff, his mind racing. When the hall finally quieted, he was alone with the ship. The last worker glanced at him nervously. "Best of luck, kid. You'll need it." Then he hurried away. Marcus stood before the warship, his heart pounding. The hall was empty now, but the ship was not silent. The hum returned, deeper and stronger, like a voice he could almost understand. And in that moment, Marcus realized something that froze his blood. He had not chosen the ship. The ship had chosen him. The night was silent when Marcus returned to the auction yard. The crowd had gone, the lights were dim, and the workers had locked everything away. But the warship still rested under chains, huge and dark, like a beast trapped in slumber. He moved closer, his footsteps crunching on the gravel. Every part of his mind told him this was madness. He had spent everything he had, maybe even his future, on a ship that most people saw as useless scrap, but his heart refused to let him stop. The memory of that hum still lived inside him. The ship looked even larger up close. The alien markings across its hull shimmered faintly in the moonlight. The symbols twisted like rivers, changing when he blinked as if they were alive. He reached out, his hand brushing against the cold metal. The instant he touched it, his body stiffened. The hum returned, stronger, deeper. It filled his chest, rattled his bones, and pushed into his head. His vision blurred. For a moment he thought he heard whispers, not in his ears but in his mind. A language he did not know yet somehow understood. Pilot, chosen, awaken. Marcus stumbled back, gasping. His hand shook. The chains around the ship rattled on their own. Dust rained from the rafters above. The ship's lights flickered once, dim blue lines running across the hull like veins awakening after centuries. "No, this can't be real," Marcus whispered. But deep inside he knew it was real. Driven by something beyond his control, he searched for an opening. At the side of the ship, a ramp began to lower slowly, groaning as if unused for ages. Marcus froze. He had not pressed anything. The ship had responded to him. The ramp touched the ground with a heavy clang. The air that flowed out was stale and cold, carrying the scent of metal and something older, something alien. Marcus hesitated. But the pull in his chest was too strong. Step by step, he climbed into the ship. Inside, the corridors were narrow, lined with glowing symbols. The walls pulsed faintly as though alive. Dust covered the floor, but the air was strangely breathable. His footsteps echoed through the hollow space. He reached what looked like the control chamber. At its center stood a tall chair surrounded by curved panels. The glass around the chamber was cracked, but beyond it Marcus could see the stars. The chair itself pulsed faintly with blue light. Again the whisper returned. "Clearer this time. Pilot, sit." Marcus's legs felt heavy. His heart pounded, but his body moved on its own. Slowly he lowered himself into the chair. The moment he touched it, the entire ship came alive. Lights flared across the walls. The symbols glowed brighter. The panels lit up with streams of alien language flashing across the screens. Energy hummed through the ship's veins, shaking the entire structure. Marcus gasped, his body locking in place. The chair held him tight. A flood of images crashed into his mind. Battlefields among the stars, fleets of ships burning, alien armies screaming in fear as this warship tore through them like a blade of fire. He felt the power, the rage, and the endless silence that followed. The voice filled his head once more. Not threatening, not cruel, simply waiting. "You are chosen. Will you command?" Marcus trembled. He did not understand what he had been pulled into. He was just one man, not a soldier, not a leader. But the ship did not care. It had chosen him not for who he was, but for who he could become. Before he could answer, a loud crash echoed from outside. He snapped out of the vision. Through the cracked glass, Marcus saw shadows moving near the yard's gates. Dark figures were approaching, carrying weapons. The hooded man had returned. The ship's panels glowed brighter, reacting to the threat. Marcus felt the chair pulse under him as though asking for a command. The hum grew stronger, filling his chest with fire. For the first time in his life, Marcus did not feel small. He felt connected to something vast, something powerful. The warship was no longer dead. It was alive, and it had awakened for him. And now, as the footsteps grew louder outside, Marcus realized the truth. He had not bought a forgotten relic. He had claimed a weapon the galaxy still feared. The yard outside filled with the sound of boots. The gates clanged shut, and the faint glow of flashlights moved across the dark ground. Marcus sat frozen in the command chair, his heart hammering. The ship pulsed around him like a living thing, sensing danger. Through the cracked glass, he saw them, a group of men in black, armed and silent, slipping between shadows. At their front walked the hooded figure from the auction. His face was hidden, but Marcus could feel his cold stare cutting through the night. The ship reacted before Marcus could. The walls lit brighter, alien symbols flashing across the panels. Energy hummed in the veins of the hull, shaking the floor beneath him. A voice spoke again in his mind. Enemy presence detected, awaiting command. Marcus's breath caught. "Command? I don't know what to do." The chair tightened around him, streams of light crawling up his arms. The panels shifted, showing images and words he could barely read. But somehow, deep in his mind, the meaning became clear. The ship was not only alive, it was teaching him. The hooded man's voice echoed outside. "Bring it down now, before it remembers what it is." Marcus's pulse quickened. He leaned forward, trying to understand the ship's language. One word burned clear on the panels. Shield. Without thinking, he touched it. A wave of energy surged through the hull. Outside, the men staggered back as a barrier of blue light shimmered around the ship. Bullets cracked against it and dissolved into sparks. The men shouted in alarm. The hooded figure stood calm, unshaken. He raised his hand, and a strange weapon gleamed in his grip, glowing with the same alien symbols Marcus had seen inside the ship. His voice carried across the night. "You do not understand what you hold. That ship was built for war, genocide, slaughter, destruction. It will not serve you. It will consume you." Marcus clenched his fist, sweat dripping down his face. He shouted through the glass, though his voice cracked. "If it was so dangerous, why bring it here? Why not destroy it already? The man's reply was sharp. Because only one kind of being can wake it. A human. The words struck like thunder. Marcus froze. His heart felt heavy. The voice in his mind pulsed again. Chosen, human pilot, rightful heir. The hooded man lowered his weapon slightly, his voice calmer now, almost pitying. This warship is called the Eternal Fang. It was built long ago when humanity first touched the stars. The galaxy united to destroy it, but no one could. They buried it, erased its name, and prayed it would never rise again. We have kept it hidden for centuries, and now you woke it. Marcus's chest tightened. His mind spun. Could it be true? Was this wreck before him once feared across galaxies? He looked around the glowing panels, the symbols burning brighter with every second. He could almost see the past, the flames, the destruction, the silence that followed. The hooded man raised his weapon again. Give it up. Step away and I may let you live. Stay, and you will share its fate. Humanity cannot be allowed to hold such a monster again. Marcus gripped the chair, his voice trembling but firm. It's not a monster. It's alive. And it chose me. The panels responded, glowing hotter, as if the ship itself agreed. The voice whispered again, louder now, clear in his mind. Not monster. Protector. Bound by will of pilot. For a moment, Marcus felt clarity. Maybe the ship had been used for war, but war was not all it was. It depended on who commanded it. It depended on the one it had chosen. The hooded man snarled, frustration breaking his calm. You fool. You think you control it? You think you will be different? It will bend you until nothing of you remains. He fired his alien weapon. The blue shield flared, cracking for a heartbeat but holding strong. The ship roared in response, its engines sparking with sudden light. The ground shook under the force. Marcus's fear turned into fire. He pressed another command without thinking. Engines. The warship's engines screamed to life, dust exploding across the yard. The shield expanded, pushing the attackers back. The hooded man staggered but did not fall. He raised his arm to block the storm, his cloak whipping in the wind. Inside, Marcus held on as the ship lifted slightly off the ground, the chains snapping one by one. The panels flashed warnings he could barely follow, but the hum in his chest was steady now. The ship trusted him. It had waited for him. The hooded man's voice broke through the chaos, sharp as steel. Then so be it. If you claim the Eternal Fang, you claim the war it carries. The galaxy will come for you. Marcus shouted back, his fear burning away. Let them come. I won't let this ship be destroyed, not now. Not ever. The final chain snapped. The warship groaned as if breathing again after centuries. The engines flared brighter, ready to rise. Marcus gripped the chair tighter. He did not know what waited beyond the auction yard. He did not know the full truth of the ship's dark past. But one thing was clear. He was no longer just a man who stumbled into an auction. He was the pilot of the Eternal Fang, and the galaxy would soon know it. The chains were gone. The warship hovered above the cracked ground of the auction yard, its engines burning with blue fire. The once dead hull now glowed with streams of light, the alien markings alive again. Wrapping around the body like veins of energy, dust swirled in violent storms as the Eternal Fang roared back to life. Marcus sat locked in the command chair, his hands gripping the glowing panels. His heart beat in rhythm with the ship. He no longer felt fear. He felt something else. A strange unity, as though the ship's strength had become his own. Outside, the men in black stumbled backward, shielding their faces from the burning wind. Some fled into the night, but the hooded man stayed. His cloak whipped in the storm, his weapon raised, his voice hard as steel. You don't understand what you've done, he shouted, his words cutting through the storm. That ship will make you a target. Every world, every empire, every power in the galaxy will come for you. Humanity is not ready to carry such a burden again. Marcus stared down at him through the cracked glass, his voice steady. Maybe humanity was never ready. Maybe that's why you buried it. But it chose me, and I won't let it die. The hooded man's weapon glowed, ready to fire. But before he could, the ship reacted on its own. A beam of light exploded from its hull, striking the ground at his feet. The yard shook with the blast, leaving a crater where the man had stood. Yet when the smoke cleared, he was gone, vanished into shadow. The panels around Marcus dimmed slightly, as if the ship, too, was resting after its first strike in centuries. Then the voice returned, calm and strong in his mind. Pilot confirmed. Human will aligned. The Eternal Fang is yours. Marcus leaned back, the words sinking deep into him. He was no soldier, no warrior. He was just a man who walked into an auction. And yet here he was, sitting in the command chair of a warship the galaxy feared. The engines roared again, and the ship lifted higher. The old roof of the auction house ripped apart as the eternal fang pushed into the open sky. The stars shone above, clear and endless. Marcus gripped the panels, feeling the controls as though they were extensions of his own body. He whispered almost to himself, "Then let's fly." The ship obeyed. In seconds, the ground fell away. The city lights below turned into specks, the land shrinking as the eternal fang pierced the clouds. Marcus gasped, his breath stolen by the sight. The stars surrounded him, wide and endless, stretching forever. For the first time in his life, he felt the true size of the universe. But the ship did not let him stay in awe for long. Warnings flashed across the panels, symbols burning in red. Marcus understood enough to know what they meant. They were being tracked. The hooded man had not lied. The galaxy already knew the warship had awakened. The voice in his head returned, quieter now but firm. "Threats incoming. Do you wish to engage?" Marcus stared at the words, his mind racing. Engage? Already? He wasn't ready. He didn't know how to fight. But then he thought of the hooded man's words, of the way everyone had laughed at the ship, ready to cut it apart for scrap. If he turned back now, the eternal fang would be destroyed. Humanity's chance would be lost. His jaw tightened. "We engage." The ship roared in answer. Panels shifted. Weapon systems hummed awake, the hull glowing brighter than ever. Marcus felt power rush through him like fire in his veins. He was not alone. He was the ship, and the ship was him. Then the stars shifted. Lights appeared at the edge of space, ships fast and armed rushing toward him. The first hunters had arrived. Marcus's fear twisted into something else. Resolve. He placed his hands on the glowing controls. His voice steady. "They think they can destroy us. Let's show them what humanity can do." The eternal fang pulsed with energy, weapons charging, engines burning. For a heartbeat, space was silent, waiting. Then the ship surged forward like a beast finally free, a trail of blue fire cutting across the stars. The galaxy had forgotten the name of humanity. They had buried its strength, laughed at its weakness, and erased its victories. But now the eternal fang had returned, and in its heart sat a human pilot who refused to let it die. Marcus's voice echoed through the command chamber, strong and unshaken. "They tried to scrap it, but humanity never dies.